Good day, class. Now, today we are going to go over part of the Industrial Revolution. Now, before we begin, I have to say some things. Um, in the video, this one and future ones, you may hear some things in the background, like some banging, cars going by, cars honking, things like that. That's because I am now in a new room doing these videos. Um, and in this new room, there's a lot of noises you'll be hearing, you may or may not be hearing in the background. So before we move on, I'd just like to apologize for that. If something happens, if it's too loud, something happens, then I'll edit it out and redo the section. But other than that, you might hear little things here and there. So with that being said, let's start with the notes. Now, before we start the notes, we have to do the warm-up. I do apologize for that. So here is your warm-up picture. The first question is, as always, analyze the picture and what do you see? All right, so look around, look at the picture, look at the things written down. There's actually like little things here and there that you can see that were pretty interesting that this cartoonist is trying to say. And that's what the second part of your question is. What is this artist trying to say? Okay, so take a minute or so, again, pause the video, really look at this picture, and then write down your answers. Okay, so the first Industrial Revolution occurred in England. We did talk about this earlier in the school year, and you should have learned this in your world history class. Now, it took some years for the United States to get involved with the Industrial Revolution. It's a little bit like 50 years or so. And the thing is, the second Industrial Revolution occurred basically because the Civil War and the Reconstruction era had ended. Now, if you remember from the last videos and from the last lesson, how the Reconstruction era was supposed to help the African Americans get back on their feet, help the South basically recover from the war. And if you remember, the South did want to have factories. They wanted some type of industry, but they ended up really going back to their old ways with plantations and crops and things like that. They did have some factories, but nowhere near close to what the North had. Now, before the Civil War, there was about 30 million people in our country. Now, the thing is, only about 1.3 million worked in some sort of factory. The rest basically worked in stores or as in trade stores, like blacksmith, leather maker, carpentry, something like that, making chairs and tables, things of that nature. Or they were at farms or dairies. Uh, so there wasn't that many people in the factories, but there were factories, especially in the North. Now, after things had started to settle down after the Civil War, some people decided, you know what, I am done, being in a farm, working on this plantation, and they decided to work in mines for the railroads and for factories. Now, the thing is, you have to remember, these people, a lot of them, they went to war. They wanted a better life. A lot of these guys were young guys. They experienced the hardship of the Civil War and the Reconstruction era, and they just wanted something better for their lives. And they knew, yeah, farming is honest work, but the thing is, it really wasn't a money-making type of industry unless you were the owner of the farm or plantation. Whereas in a factory, hey, you know what? You go to work, you clock in, you clock out. You don't have to worry about, working extra or, hey, something happened in the morning, you have to go into work. No, there's someone else already taking that shift. So that's where people started to go more towards cities and the urban life. Now, like I said earlier, While the South did have some factories, the North was booming with factories. I mean, there were so many of them. And there was other type of industries, and the thing is, they basically started producing jobs. You know, a factory that's starting up, they don't need just 10, 20 people. Sometimes they would need hundreds, maybe even thousands, depending how big the industry was, you know, or the mining area was, you know. So they needed people. Now, the GNP, the gross national product, you should remember that from your vocab, it grew 8 times larger than it did when the Civil War ended. Okay, and again, you have to remember, Civil War, people were working. If they weren't fighting, they were working for factories, for other type of industry, clothing, weapon making, things like that. Now, the thing is, they're making so much more money. And the thing is, during war, usually companies make a lot of money. But that's the thing. Now that factories were booming in the north and industry was growing, railroads was connecting the country. Um, it was basically just a money maker. The country was making money. There was new things coming up, and there was this whole country full of resources. Raw materials was in just full abundance. Fresh water, timber, which is, wood, forest areas, stuff like that, coal, iron, copper. There was mining to be done. There was railroads to be placed down. There was trees to chop down. There was coal and iron, copper to dig. So there was a job basically for people. Now, the one problem is a lot of the material could be found in the western mountain area of the country. So that meant people had to expand west, and those in the west had to basically come east. Now, the railroad, it brought settlers and miners to the region, and not only that, these railroads, these trains could carry a lot of weight and material. And what they would do is they would carry the resources back to the east, back where they don't have as much fresh water. They don't have as much trees. They might have had coal. Coal was big in the East Coast area, still is actually. Iron, same thing with iron, and other natural resources that the West had that was untapped that the East had already used. They've already chopped down the trees. They've already dug up coal and stuff like that. So now they're looking to the West like, here is an area that we haven't got yet. Let's go get it. One of the biggest things in demand at that time was petroleum. Now, petroleum, it's also known as crude oil or simple oil. And the thing is, this type of oil is needed to make kerosene. Now, kerosene was used to light up lanterns and stoves. So it lit up the night and it heated up homes. So it was in huge demand. And the thing is, the first oil rig to be created and used in America was in Pennsylvania. Now, the thing is, something like this, something like kerosene, that is desperately needed. Because you have to remember, at this time, when the lights went out, when the sun went down, that was it. You had like torches, and that's all you could use to light. Now, the thing is, a lot of big cities, they would have street lamps, but they would have it filled with kerosene, and that's the way they would light up the town. But if you didn't have kerosene, you really couldn't see your way at night unless you had a lantern with you or a candle. And a candle, if you don't know, it doesn't light up much. So this was in high demand. So oil, this is the beginning of our dependence on oil in our country. This is where it all starts. The population of the United States tripled, believe it or not, from 1860 to 1910. Now, this caused the demand for items to increase, not just from, hey, I need a place to stay, but everything, everything from food, water, housing, um, clothing, you name it, it needed things that people need uh, when in high demand. Now, the population increased mainly for two reasons. One, large families. At this time, this is when the families really started to grow. A family of, let's say, 12 back in, let's say 1850, now in the 1880s, now those 12 kids have, eight, nine of their own, so that really grows the population. And that's just one family. The other thing was a flood of immigrants from Europe and Asia. Now, we did that Achieve 3000 where we talked about Angel Island, and that's where the Asian Americans come from, the Australian Americans. They came from their area, Japan, China, Philippines, Mongolia, um, Australia, and then they would come and they had to go through the process at Angel Island. Now, in Europe, people from Britain, Ireland, France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Africa, Germany, they all had to go through Ellis Island. And that's the picture you see to your right. These people would come on boats and they would cross by the Statue of Liberty. And from there, they would be processed. Now, many of those people who left their nation in order to search for a better life here in the United States. Other reasons were, shortage of food, religious persecution. They left for other various reasons, and the thing is, there was about 20 million or so people who were coming. Now, the thing is, with the demand of workers in the newly growing industry, these immigrants were very much welcomed by the corporations because now they have factories, new factories popping up everywhere, and now they need workers. And who better than these immigrants who are going to be coming in? They may not speak the language, but they can do simple jobs. So here's your write-up. Now, I get that you may be the only person, at your house, or if you're watching this on Friday, you may be the only person doing this. So this falls on you, okay? But this is the question. What do you and your group predict will be the biggest challenges that the United States will face? Rank them from the biggest challenge to the least biggest. So do you think it will be crowded cities, fascism, favoritism of a particular race or social status, corruption in politics, corporation using influx of immigrants to their advantages, corporations becoming too powerful, removing more natural resources than truly needed? Okay, so which one do you think is going to be the biggest challenge that the United States will face? And go down the list to the least biggest challenge. So here's a writing prompt. So instead of saying my group and I, you could say I believe that the biggest should be challenge the U.S. will face is, write it out, because, and explain. And the next part, the second biggest challenge will be such and such and such, whatever it may be, because la 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 la. Now, you see that etc. That means to continue. So go to the third, the fourth, the fifth, and finally the sixth. Now, once you're finished, put your name on your notes and turn it into the basket. Okay, so that will be it for today. All right, hope you guys learned something new, and I'll see you later. Okay, have fun.